Human mind cannot live without God. That sounds odd. It's a very interesting concept. Our mind has a dependence, an innate dependence on a God figure. What am I talking about?
Honestly, I have no idea.
Welcome back, everyone, to Bridge the Divide, where I examine irrational beliefs, the irrational behaviors that often follow, and how we, with education, rationality, and reason, can bridge the societal divides that they create. Today, we're going to take a look at a video from Christian content creator Perry Brimah from over at his channel, The Esoteric Show, where he poses 15 questions that he thinks atheists simply cannot answer. I know, question-response videos are often low-hanging fruit. But honestly, sometimes you just need a break from constantly raiding the deep intellectual vault and take on a video where the content pretty much writes itself.
I can't believe I get paid for this.
Now, for those of you who may be unfamiliar with Perry, he's a Christian, though I haven't been able to determine exactly what flavor of Christianity he subscribes to, and he's a Nigerian political activist who unsuccessfully attempted to run for the Nigerian presidency back in 2018. He touts himself as holding a master's degree in molecular biology as well as an MD, and he claims that he's a dedicated college professor located somewhere in New York. Now, in the effort to confirm those claims that he's making about his personal education, tracking down the detailed background of his credentials has proven somewhat difficult, as he himself has never shared that information, and all of my attempts to contact the organizations that are allegedly connected to him have gone unanswered. I did find that his name is attached to a number of published articles regarding studies concerning sleep and various cardiovascular disorders, studies that were conducted by SUNY Downstate and NYU medical centers. I also have to note that Perry was once the target of condemnation by the Nigerian army back in 2019 for allegedly running a GoFundMe scam from right here in the States. A scam that purported to support northern Nigerian soldiers fighting Boko Haram insurgents, and they were allegations that ended in the swift removal of Perry's campaign. Since then, he spent most of his time commenting on various political and military state of affairs in Nigeria, and making videos where he argues for his particular conceptualization of his god or what he thinks atheism is, but his channel seems to be dormant right now because he hasn't dropped a video in 5 months. I also have to say that this original video over on Perry's channel is just shy of 15 minutes long, with almost all of that runtime dedicated to him answering his own questions from the assumption that his god exists. So naturally, with you, the audience, in mind, I went ahead and cut all of that irrelevant nonsense out. And that left me with a much more manageable 2-minute video of questions to respond to. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and dive in and find out what Perry's 15 questions are and see if they are in fact unanswerable by an atheist.
So, what we are talking about is the questions that an atheist cannot answer.
While I readily acknowledge that there exist some questions that humans collectively, and that includes theists as much as it does atheists, currently cannot answer, the general issue with these types of videos is not that atheists may or may not be able to answer a particular question. You know, because usually if we don't have or don't know an answer to something, we generally are not in the habit of making up an answer based upon what we feel or hope to be true. It's if the answers that are being posited by theists in the wake of no other answer in fact justified. And if the theist's answer to any particular question that we can't currently answer is God did it, and they don't have any evidence to support the existence of this God they're asserting, then the answer they're putting forward is in fact not justified, and they're just sitting in the same boat as the rest of humanity. This very fact is exactly why I cut nearly 13 minutes of content out of Perry's video, because his God-predicated answers are completely irrelevant.
And of course, these are very, very legitimate questions.
There isn't a single doubt in my mind that they're questions, Perry. Their legitimacy, however, has yet to be determined.
So you have atheists, you have people who call themselves humanists, you have some people who basically are anti-godists.
I guess you could refer to anti-theists as anti-godists, especially when your aim is to utilize semantics to disingenuously frame atheists as having the biased goal of rejecting your particular God claim for what ostensibly would be nothing more than irrational reasons.
They seem emphatic about revolting against the said God.
Well, emphatic in regards to the spreading of false information or anti-intellectualism, yes. To be completely honest, if you yourself are actively choosing to deny or even acknowledge specific evidence because you want to maintain your belief in your God hypothesis, that's on you, and I really don't care. It's really only when individuals who are choosing to do that then attempt to take advantage of other people's ignorance by spreading their uncritical nonsense to them that I take a stand. To put it simply, it has nothing to do with your God concept and everything to do with you, what you're peddling, how you're peddling it, and who you're peddling it to.
So there are these questions, and I'll be listing the questions so we see whether these people can answer them, and you pose these questions to these atheists anytime you talk to them to see if they do have answers to them.
Great, let's hear your questions, Perry. But keep in mind that even if you ask a question that an atheist, for whatever reason, cannot answer, that they cannot answer it is in no way evidence for your God.
The first question is, what is the purpose of your existence?
What is my purpose?
You pass butter.
Oh my god.
Well, that's easy. The purpose or meaning for an individual's existence is subjectively determined by that individual for themselves. That human beings are able to do this is psychologically healthy, as it affirms their experience and their identity. As opposed to religious proponents who seek to strip away the personal identity of the individual and then emotionally manipulate them into accepting one dictated to them by the religion.
The second question is, if we can get away with it, why should we not kill fellow men?
If someone ever tries to kill you, you try to kill him right back.
So this concerns morality. Seeing as how morality is entirely subjective regardless of the existence of a god, moral inclinations and valuations are subjective to the determinations of the individual. So why a person may or may not commit any particular heinous act is entirely up to the individual. Now, if you're posing the question to me as an atheist, Perry, while there are a number of reasons why, such as my unwillingness to sacrifice my personal freedom to commit such an act, or the incalculable pain or distress that such an act would cause both my family and the family of the victim, ultimately, I don't commit murder even if I could get away with it because I simply do not want to. And I don't need to reference an external deity figure to justify why I don't want to do something. I only need the evidence provided by the existence of my evolved capacity for empathy.
The third question is, why should man conserve the environment?
In my opinion, that answer should be fairly obvious. Our prolonged survival as a species is fundamentally predicated on the survival of our environment. If we as a species don't desire to die out, then it obviously behooves us to maintain the environment that sustains us. However, this determination is also subjective to the individual and the group. If you personally don't want our species to survive, or you don't care if it does or does not, then feel free to wreck the environment as you see fit. But as an empathetic individual, I will subjectively choose to side with the majority in repairing and maintaining our planet.
There's only one solution for Earth pollution!
The next question is, what is the singularity?
Oh, Jesus, not that crap again!
In the context of cosmology, it's a mathematical expression that describes a point that is so phenomenally hot and dense that our current understanding of physics breaks down. This term is specifically utilized to describe the state of the universe prior to the inflation event and the center of a black hole.
The next question is, how did that dense singularity at the beginning of the Big Bang come into existence?
So Perry's general ignorance of the science has led to him asking this malformed question, as the singularity is describing a state of energy and is not something that is created or itself creates. Given that by our current understanding, energy can neither be created nor destroyed, then we can hypothesize that while the energy itself is infinite, the singularity may itself be nothing more than another transitional state of that energy, similar to how matter is a transitional state of that energy.
The next question is, can something come into existence out of nothing? If not, how do you explain the last two questions?
To answer the first point, no, something from a philosophical nothing is a contradiction. Secondly, no one other than theists is claiming that there was ever nothing. Third, what we call the singularity was not created. At our best guess, that state is merely a result of prior conditions. The energy was always there and will always be there in one state or another.
Question number 7 is, categorically prove your existence beyond being in a dream.
Nemo, man, you gotta wake up. Your shit is topsy-turvy.
So basically, you want an answer to the problem of hard solipsism. Well, unfortunately, this is one of those questions that cannot currently be answered either by theists or atheists. But to address why we cannot answer it, we have to go all the way back to René Descartes and his famous hypothesized demon. Descartes identified the logical possibility that any given experience that a person is having could in fact be a deception that is being fed to them by the demon. And because our personal experiences are internal, inaccessible by others, and entirely subjective to us, this results in us having no access to a methodology that could absolutely eliminate Descartes' demon from contention, because any attempt that resulted in the appearance of the elimination of the demon could itself also be a deception. This also applies to the theistic claims that a god exists, because the personal feeling that a god exists, or the interpretation of any given phenomena that appears to confirm the existence of a particular god, could itself also be a delusion projected by the demon. Simply asserting a god does not get you out of this conundrum. It just confirms that you're epistemically in the same boat as everyone else.
Question number 8 is, can you scientifically discuss parthenogenesis?
I'm going to assume that this question is in reference to the mythological story of the virgin birth of Christ, and the answer is yes, we can. Parthenogenesis is a form of asexual reproduction in which a female can produce an embryo without fertilizing an egg with sperm. It's actually an event that occurs naturally in several jawed vertebrates, invertebrates, insects, arachnids, and plants. It is not, however, something that can occur successfully in mammals, as either the resulting embryo immediately begins to deteriorate or it eventually forms what's called a teratoma. So given the evidence, any assertion by theists that such an event did in fact take place requires an appeal to magic.
Question number 9 is, do you agree that evolutionary principles prove religion?
The only thing evolutionary principles prove about religion are that ideas or concepts that resulted in humans unifying into larger groups improved their chances of survival and therefore passing on their genes by making the effort of survival easier and more efficient through greater cooperation. So while unifying concepts like religious ideology do have evolutionary utility, evolution says nothing as to the truth of the content of that unifying idea or concept.
The next question is, why do you sleep?
What's that got to do with it?
Well, this is another interesting question. Interesting in that I have no idea how it pertains to theism or why he thinks atheists can't answer it, but also because there isn't just one singular definitive answer as to why we or any other organism requires sleep. What we do know is that the sleep cycle is necessary for maintaining physiological and psychological health, and recent findings by the National Institutes of Health suggest that the sleep cycle plays a vital housekeeping role in removing toxins from the brain that build up during the wake cycle.
Question number 11 is, why do you yawn?
Oh, damn it, Ellie. You gotta stop doing that. You're putting me to sleep. Damn it.
Much like the sleep question, there isn't one singular definitive answer for why we yawn. Given the immediate physiological results of yawning, which include a rise in heartbeat, an increase in blood pressure, and a faster cycling of blood and spinal fluid throughout the body, all of which have a stimulating effect on the brain, the current conclusion is that we yawn for a combination of cognitive stimulation, thermoregulation, and as a potential indicator of dehydration. We've also identified the phenomena that the act of a person yawning can trigger a response in the sympathetic nervous system of other people, triggering them to yawn as well. And while it's not currently conclusive, it is possible that this response confirms the dehydration explanation, as the act of yawning as a result of dehydration would trigger sympathetic yawning in other members of the group, which would then initiate them to solve the problem. A similar, albeit much grosser, phenomenon exists in vultures in which one member of the flock will vomit as a defense mechanism against a perceived threat, which will in turn trigger sympathetic vomiting in the other members of the flock. To be completely honest, how the sympathetic nervous system plays such a strong role in the survival mechanisms of social species is a fascinating topic that I recommend anybody take the time to dive into.
Question number 13 is, why does a cock hatch in seclusion crow when a hawk passes by?
It actually took me a few moments to figure out what he was asking here. Basically, he wants to know why a rooster that has been hatched in seclusion away from other chickens will still crow as an alarm response to seeing a predator like a hawk. And the answer to this comes down to the mechanisms behind instinctual behaviors. While our current answers are not definitive and the work is still ongoing, these mechanisms are thought to involve the interaction of the various structures of the limbic system. The best that we have concluded so far is that instinctual behaviors, or what are also so-called stereotyped responses, are a genetic adaptive response to environmental stimuli that is carried out by the central nervous system. Another fantastic example of this is what we call the mammalian diving reflex, which is what causes babies to instinctively hold their breaths when submerged underwater even though they have no experience of swimming.
Question number 14. We have 15 questions here. The second to the last question I have here is, since there is absolutely no fact and no time-bound guarantee in science, can a position devoid of fact surpass other positions?
Issues with English being a second language aside, I think that this is just Perry's very, very weird way of asking if positions that are based solely on feelings with no external evidentiary basis can ever surpass positions that are based on facts. And the very simple answer to that is no. If you possess no evidence to support your conclusion beyond your personal feelings or your intuitions, then your conclusion will never surpass those conclusions that are backed by evidence.
Final question is, can you defend or explain or justify the placebo effect?
To a degree, yes, we can explain the placebo effect, but like sleep and yawning, the answers are fairly broad and not definitive. Primarily, the two main hypotheses for the placebo effect are expectancy theory, that a person will behave or act in a certain way because they are motivated to select a specific behavior over others due to what they expect the result of that behavior to be, and classical conditioning, which refers to the process of an automatic response that is paired to a specific stimulus. To put it rather simply, when a person is sick and then they are convinced by someone else that they will be receiving medication that will make them feel better, they then in turn expect to feel better and then act in such a way that confirms that as a result of being conditioned to the general stimulus that medication makes you feel better. So that was Perry's 15 questions that he thought atheists cannot answer. And while a couple of the answers to those questions are not absolutely definitive and the work is still ongoing, and one of those questions simply cannot be answered, pretty much the rest of them are entirely answerable by anyone with a basic understanding of the field to which they pertain. Now, as far as bridging the divide here, when it comes to answering various questions about ourselves or about the universe in general, it's important to remember that even if we couldn't answer any of the questions that were posed here, that would still not be evidence that any kind of a god or gods exists. And of course, asserting that a god exists in order to provide an answer to one of those questions is just a god of the gaps. So in order to avoid doing the disservice of leading others down unjustified paths of reasoning, we have to ensure that we ourselves are always being as intellectually honest as possible, so that we can continue as a species to act upon our instinctive curiosity and work together to seek these answers so that we can continue our collective growth as a species. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you did, please like, share, and subscribe, and hit that bell for notifications. And be sure to leave a comment below. I love reading your responses, and those interactions help with the dreaded algorithm. Don't forget, April is Autism Acceptance Month. A link to where you can support these important efforts is down in the description. And if you love scary movies, be sure to check out me and my filmmaker friends over at the Week in Horror podcast, now in our 5th season. Everything you need to become a channel member here, get yourself some official Bridge the Divide gear, or support the podcast is down in the description. Once again, a huge thank you to each and every single one of you for continuing to support this channel, and as always, be safe, be excellent to each other, and together we can bridge the divide.